Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back again with Nick Gallo for another episode of Upping Your Game. Welcome back, Nick.
Thanks, Tom. Glad to be here.
Nick, the next topic I wanted to take up was what we used to call training and communication. That was one of the hallmarks of an effective compliance program. But as I wrote this chapter, I realized something very different has gone on here, and we've moved to true education. So I want to talk to you about AI and the future of compliance education. If I could maybe give some reasons why I think we've moved to a different level, and indeed why traditional compliance communication and training is no longer sufficient. Training was PowerPoints, 1 hour, take the test, you're good for the next year. Communication was some sort of ongoing communication, whether it was micro-learning, whether it was a short burst of information, whether it was you're going to Nigeria, let me show you this video on our facilitation payments policy. Well, now we've had other developments. We had gamification. We've had different training strategies come out of HR. And AI, Nick, to my mind, gives us the opportunity to put them all together in a way we've never done, because I say it's delivering the right message to the right person at the right time. Where do you see the future of compliance education from your perspective as co-CEO at Ethico?
So I think compliance education might not change a lot in the next 2 years, but I think 10 years from now, it's going to look wildly different. I think the days will be gone where people are sitting in an hour-long training, again, assuming it's not like regulatorily commanded, but I think we'll be able to fill in the gaps in a lot more different ways to get the education across. What's happened over the last 10 plus years is there's been like a precipitous drop in our stakeholders and ourselves, our like attention spans. And there's been this sort of keener eye to being able to kind of see through the BS. I think many times there's always kind of two messages, right? Like at the end of the day, we're trying to say, hey, we care about a culture of integrity. We care about FCPA. We care about this thing. And there's always a gap in all of our experiences. I call this like the Denny's effect. There's always a gap between the moons over my hammy that's on the laminated menu and the moons over my hammy that ends up getting served to me. And we all kind of expect that gap to some degree in products we buy and so forth. And we also kind of subconsciously look for the width of that gap or the breadth of that gap within our organization. Like how many times have you been at a swimming pool and you see a sign up that says no running, yet there's a bunch of kids running around the lifeguard's chair in spite of it? Which rules matter? Which rules don't matter? That kind of calculus is going on all the time. And I think when an organization pays quote unquote lip service to their rules by doing kind of a half-baked education, I think the company, the stakeholders can kind of read into that. And so on the other side of that line or on the other side of that spectrum, I think when an organization is really serious about something, it's very clear. Think about that old Alcoa example. Every organization, every manufacturing company says safety is important. Alcoa started their freaking board meetings and every single meeting talking about safety. All right, so they really care about that because of the frequency of it and sort of the amplification of that topic. I think now with AI, there's an opportunity for an ethics and compliance department to really kind of mirror that kind of amplification or amplification of various topics by increasing the frequency that the communication is sort of given out to everybody. It doesn't just have to be the one year training. Okay, cool. Check the box, brush off our hands, brush off our shoulders. That's done. No behaviors are really going to be changed by that. People have to hear things 7 times, 7 ways. That's a great thing that kind of was like historically a platitude that now is actually achievable. So to your question on how I see it changing, I think there's going to be a massive sort of fractalization of training where maybe it's reinforcements. Maybe these are kind of sand to kind of fill in the gaps in the jar of rocks that might be our pillar trainings. But there's a lot of opportunity to advertise or quote unquote, educate, quote unquote, advertise on a particular topic and really kind of pierce that sort of veil of attention. That's at our fingertips.
The regulators, starting a few years back, said that first training had to be targeting and effective, and you had to figure out a way to measure effectiveness. Now they want to have an even more refined message to individual employees. And one of the reasons I was so excited in writing this chapter around AI and compliance education was we have now the information and tools to deliver the targeted message to the person who needs it. Now, if you're head of accounts payable, or if you're the top salesman in, you name the region, you may need additional training, but we can deliver that. But for the average person, a fun, engaging message that hits them when they need it can be as effective. So could you really maybe say a few words about targeting and how that can be more effective than the long form training we've been used to?
So I think we can talk about it in sort of a theoretical way that's maybe a little bit forward thinking that we might see a couple years from now more sort of ubiquitously. And I think we can talk about it like how we can target more effectively today. So in the future, perhaps there will be a ding on your phone when you're traveling to a different area, or there's a certain level of sort of communication with a particular vendor, and there's a reminder that comes on your phone or on your desktop to say, hey, don't forget about this policy. Okay, that's a cool kind of forward thinking way that is maybe not that far off, but no one's really doing that right now. For today, you can start redoing your trainings, or you can start repurposing your trainings and boiling them down into the things that matter most for different departments, just using a free LLM that's out there. Okay, you can guess what, like, the people in accounts payable are very different than the people in sales, right? They're different personality types. Nobody's trying to pick between being a controller at a manufacturing plant versus being a bond trader, right? Like, different people sort of self-select into these different roles. And you can use an LLM today to say, here is my FCPA training, or here is my discrimination and harassment training, and create a bunch of scenarios, or create the training document or the training talking points that are really going to resonate with those audiences in a more sort of profound way. And I think when we can zoom out of this whole thing and recognize that, as we've said on several of these episodes, our job is to create the circumstances for compliance. Our job is to drive excellence in our organization through a culture of integrity. If that's ever going to be achieved, that means that we're changing behaviors. We can't change behaviors unless we understand the audience whose behaviors we're trying to change. And like, advertisers are experts at this. Look at Disney. The commercial that Disney has on the Disney Channel for kids to come to the Magic Kingdom is very different than the one that they have for adults. It's still trying to achieve, to their parents, it's still trying to achieve the same end. And so we need both the accounting team and the sales team, the ones who are in the office and the ones that are out in the field, to still comply with these rules and these standards that we've set. And so we need to, again, stack the deck in our favor and increase the odds of piercing that veil of attention and really resonating with those different audiences. And you don't have to do that on your own anymore. You don't have to get a bunch of books to do that. You can say, how would I explain this to somebody who's in the field? And you can drop your training into the LLM, and it's going to spit out, hey, talk about it this way. Or I'm talking to a diverse group of people who are in a different culture. What are some sort of cultural considerations that I would need, or that I should bring to this conversation or bring to this training, so that I can be sensitive to that culture, or I can resonate more with that culture? You can really kind of, you again can just kind of increase the odds that, like, your message is going to resonate immediately. Also, one other thing, I think boiling down a training into the things that, let's say there's kind of 4 different personality types, or let's just cut them in half. Some people are highly analytical, detail-oriented, and some people are kind of shoot from the hip, they move a lot faster. Your policy or your training should be able to resonate with each of those 2 different sort of tiers of people. You should have a bulleted of too long didn't read takeaways. What are the main things that I need to get from this training? And then you can have all the details there as well for that other group of people. So I think it's hard to thread all these different needles in the old world where you just had to come up with a PowerPoint and just you're sending it out to everybody. Now there's a lot more opportunity to get more engagement and really increase the odds that your message is going to resonate by just kind of being a little bit more thoughtful about who the audience you're trying to speak to is.
We've so far in this podcast, Nick, focused on what I'm going to call the output, the delivery of education to a corporate employee. I'd like to turn to the input side, because you have consistently talked about crowdsourcing your risk intelligence, but it also strikes me that you could crowdsource your training, your communication, and your compliance communication delivered with that output directly to the right person, the right place at the right time. But now, as a compliance professional, you have not insights, you have access to compliance data, you have access to HR data, you have access to sales data. What if you could incorporate sales data of the ease or difficulty of closing a deal timelines, amount of gifts, travel, and entertainment spend, a wide variety of sales data, and you could put that into a compliance communication. You're getting ready to go to Central Asia. We typically have a closing timeline of 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. You have typically had to spend X number of meals. We suggest that you take this approach so that you could give an entire package of information for the business person. They may not even recognize it as compliance. They're saying, oh, this is an enhanced sales strategy for me. Could you say a few words about the input as opposed to the output?
Yeah, I think, man, I love that example, because what does success look like and what does failure look like? If you can give somebody a picture of what success looks like in any department, in any field, the odds of them trying to replicate that is a lot higher than if they're just sort of like wandering through Asia trying to get a deal closed. And I think if we can be thoughtful and we know the business and we know those stakeholders, those sort of leadership stakeholders in these different departments, and get some insight from them, then the odds of us putting something out that's going to actually work is always going to be a lot higher. And then, by the way, at the same time, it helps to reinforce that relationship and reinforce our brand. I was talking to somebody recently, and she was talking about the success that she had. They were going to change some training around third-party management. And instead of just kind of staying in the laboratory and saying, this is how the policy needs to change, she went and met with all these third-party folks. Or no, I'm sorry, it was on cybersecurity. So she met with all these cybersecurity guys, and she was like, how would somebody break this system? And they ended up having this really fun session, and all these ideas came up that she wasn't even thinking about. And now she had not only a better policy, but she had a better picture for success. And a bunch of the stuff that she was worried about, that she thought she was really going to have to underscore, those were all kind of, turns out they were all kind of taken care of by systems that were already in place. So she didn't really need to spend a lot of time on those risks. Those weren't real risks. They were just sort of theoretical risks. That unearthed a lot more things that, again, weren't even on her radar. So I think, again, the more we can come to proactive away from reactive, the more we can come to anticipating, the more we can sort of control the inputs, the odds increase significantly that the outputs are really kind of within the lines and within the tolerances that like we have in place. I love that example though about a salesperson, because that's putting the medicine in the peanut butter so that the dog will take it. It's like, hey, here's a great sort of sales packet. This is what a quality deal looks like. We've done that in various parts of our organization, and as you gave that example, I was realizing like, oh, that was actually a compliance move that we did. Like, we saw that a deal that closes usually has a deal that has 3 to 5 people that have been involved with the deal. Those close at a 5 times higher rate. So it's okay, guys, this is how, you should try to have multiple stakeholders involved with the deal. It's exactly what you're talking about. Giving that picture of success, controlling those inputs, end up affecting the outputs, which we can't control, which by their nature, we're going to be playing catch up on.
If it's one phrase I've heard in the business world as much as any other one, it's reduction of sales cycle.
Right. Velocity.
Velocity. And if we can bring that literally from the compliance perspective, it's the medicine and the peanut butter, but more importantly, it's greater profitability.
Yeah, and then it's so much easier. And like speed, to your point, is like everyone loves that word. Velocity is something that like you can measure. And so if you can take steps out of a third-party risk management process, and that's so easy to quantify. It's for a department that is, as long as I've been here, considered this cost center, and all I've heard time and time again is how hard it is to show our value. We have to create the circumstances to prove our value. Either the stuff we're doing matters or it doesn't. Either it adds enterprise value to our organizations or it doesn't. If it does, it's incumbent on us to figure out how to make that case, because value is in the eye of the beholder. It's like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. And we, thankfully, all speak the same language. We all know what the same squiggles on the page are in terms of numbers. Like, numbers are numbers. We all speak the same language. It's incumbent on us to frame what we're doing in a compelling way so that people can be like, oh my gosh, that light bulb turns on. Oh my gosh, there's gold in them hills. You know what I'm saying? There's oil in them hills, or whatever. And that velocity thing is so easy to quantify. How much time do we save? How much dollars is attached to those time across that time savings? And you just multiply it out. And then we say, hey, look, I saved $100,000 on our onboarding of $1 million vendor. We can make that case and have that conversation. And someone could say, oh my gosh, wow, this organization really, or this department really does help our organization run better. And again, I just want to keep getting back to this thing. In finance, the volatility of a portfolio is denominated as sigma, it's denominated as risk. So to the extent that we're reducing risk in our organization, we are reducing volatility in the organization, okay? As volatility of outcome, volatility of performance, volatility around sort of the adherence to policies and procedures that we have in place. At our core, from a risk mitigation perspective, that is what every executive cares about. That's what every investor who's investing in your company cares about. Is our prediction of the future likely? And to what sort of range around that prediction is most likely sort of the outcome to occur? As we're reducing the volatility of the organization, it just inherently adds value to the company. And it shows up in so many different spots. I could just ramble on about this forever, but we need to have that confidence, to your point, to say, hey, this education I'm doing is really collapsing the sales cycle. This education I'm doing and the way that we've changed our third-party onboarding policy, our policy to onboard third parties and who we're assessing and what we're assessing, it's collapsing the time that it takes to bring on a new vendor. All those things fall directly to the bottom line, and we have to take a little bit of credit for those things if we're going to elevate to this sort of grown folks table where business is done and so forth. I love the way you put that.
Could we say compliance education to reduce volatility?
That's what I'd be saying, that's what it's actually doing, right? Like zoom out from this whole thing, as we're educating people to say, this is our standards and procedures, or this is what we expect from you. We know that some people are going to run at the pool and some people are going to comply and not run at the pool. We're just trying to reduce the number of people that are running at the pool because that ends up getting, people falling and being drama, volatility at the pool, okay? If we can recognize that at some level, this education is kind of a control to the obligations that are espoused in our policies and procedures, then we should be able to tie that to the reduction in volatility in the actual behaviors in the organization that accumulate in pursuit of the company's mission. So I think that should be a bumper sticker. That should be a t-shirt.
You may have just won yourself a t-shirt. On that note, I don't think we're going to get much better than this podcast. So thank you again. I look forward to continuing this conversation.
See you next time.
Compliance Podcast Network. Start your mornings with daily compliance news, quick, sharp updates on the top compliance and ethics stories in under 5 minutes every morning in Compliance Podcast Network. Because compliance never sleeps. Need practical advice fast? Check out Compliance Tip of the Day. One actionable idea to level up your program. Short and sweet. Every day on Compliance Podcast Network. Got 10 minutes? We've got the week's top 10 stories. 10 for 10 brings you the big compliance headlines. Fast, fun, and focused. Every Saturday on Compliance Podcast Network. And don't miss the Sunday Book Review, where compliance meets culture through must-read books and big ideas every Sunday in Compliance Podcast Network. Whether you're in the office, on a walk, or commuting, stay smart, stay ethical, stay tuned. Only on the Compliance Podcast Network. Available wherever you listen to podcasts.